Honorable Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that speech. Was she honorable? Okay. I was just going to have to announce that the Prime Minister may be not able to come. She's coming now. She's been delayed at the airport. I was going to say that we are indeed affected by climatic events. She's at the airport seeing off the Royal Highness from Bhutan, who's visiting Bangladesh, the King of Bhutan. And his flight is delayed not because of weather problems in Dhaka, but weather problems in Bhutan and Paro. And she can't leave the airport until he gets on the plane. So evidently he has done, and she's on her way. So I'll keep you entertained for a few minutes until she comes. And then hopefully we shall have her speech and the formal inaugural. And apologies for the first session of the plenary conference, which is inevitably now going to be delayed. And I hope Charles Erhardt, I don't know if he's in the room here, will forgive us and will manage to recoup a little bit of time later on. So let me say a few words about this conference for the benefit of people who haven't been up with us for the last few days. Many of you have been here from the 24th of March, those of you who went on the field visits. People went in different groups to different parts of the country, in 8 different groups. In fact, one of the groups went to Chor Kukri Mukri in the south, which the minister just mentioned, to see the activities down there. Others went up north, others went to the central parts of the country. I've spoken to quite a few of the participants who went on the field visits, and they seem to have had an interesting and positive experience there. Yesterday, we had a whole large number of people join us who didn't go for the field visits, who have come for the conference. And for those of you who were at dinner last night, I gave you a little bit of a flavor of what to expect. We are doing a number of innovative things in this conference. As you've already heard from Atiq, the theme is scaling up. And the intent is to try to draw lessons, not just share information, share practices, but to try and distill lessons out of it, which we hope to put into various thematic chapters that would then go into a reasonably thorough academic publication. We have had discussions with a well-known international academic publisher called EarthScan, who are quite interested in looking at our proposals for the book once we finish this conference and put it together and give it to them. And we hope that it will come out within the next 8 to 12 months, which will be in time for it to be cited and used in the forthcoming 5th assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, which is due out in 2014, which means that the literature that it's going to cite needs to be out by late 2012 or early 2013. And this time around, in the 5th assessment report, they have included 4 chapters on adaptation, which means 2 things. Firstly, that the governments, which make up the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, have recognized the need and they have a demand for information on adaptation. This is unusual. We've never had more than 1 or at best 2 and 1.5 chapter on adaptation in the past. This time there are 4. And they're effectively looking, I'll give you a potted characterization of what the difference of the 4 chapters are. The first one is to do with adaptation planning, the next one to do with implementation, and the third to do with, we need to go and receive her? Okay, I think we need to take a break now and receive the Prime Minister.
So, ladies and gentlemen, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Dr. Hassan Mahmood, the State Minister for Environment and Forests, Mr. Mesbaul Alam, Secretary of the Ministry of Environment and Forests, Dr. Atiq Rahman, and Dr. Saleemul Huq will now proceed to receive the Honorable Prime Minister. In the meantime, you may kindly remain seated.
Okay, I've been asked to keep you entertained a little longer while they go and do the formalities. So I'm off the hook there. Okay, so let me finish the story on the IPCC. The 4 chapters are very crudely adaptation planning, implementation, thirdly lessons from that, and also barriers to adaptation or limits to adaptation. And the 4th one looks at economics of adaptation. And in fact, we have a number of the lead authors of all of these chapters in the audience here, in the participants list here. So if anybody's interested, please do get in touch with them. So the the one thing is the governments have a demand for information on adaptation. On the other hand, the authors, the lead authors of these chapters, will have a demand for information. And normally in the IPCC, the information that they rely on are peer-reviewed scientific journal articles, of which there are a growing number on adaptation, but nowhere near enough to satisfy the information needs that these lead authors are going to need. The other thing that we need to recognize is that a lot of knowledge on adaptation is practical knowledge, particularly when it comes to community-based adaptation activities, which are not necessarily written up in peer-reviewed scientific articles. Therefore, the lead authors are going to have to look at that other, what in the IPCC jargon is called gray literature or non-peer-reviewed scientific literature. They're going to have to look at it. And they are authorized as lead authors to make judgments on the validity of gray literature and to cite gray literature if they feel it is required, it fills a gap, it's important, and it's credible. And one of the things that the IPCC lead authors meeting in Japan recently decided is that for the adaptation chapters, we will have to look at gray literature and we'll have to consider it. Obviously, it will have to be credible to be cited. And so for those of you who are producing, doing good work, producing reports that you'd like to have cited in the IPCC, please talk to the lead authors in the IPCC who are present here, and they can give you guidance on how to make sure that your information is at least given to the right lead author in the right chapter, who will then read it and make a decision on whether he cites it or not. But with coming back to the book, what we hope to do is to have a book which will meet that standard of being a recognized academic publication in the international domain in time for the IPCC to cite it. So those of you who are scientists who publish, the call is to publish whatever you're working on in the next year. Those of you who are doing practitioners, who are doing good work on the ground, would like to report it and have it cited in the IPCC, publish your reports and pass them on to those of us who are in the IPCC lead authors. You can look up the IPCC website and find out who the lead authors are and just send it to any of the lead authors or send it to me or any of the ones who are here. So the need for scientific literature is again a growing area, and this time we're focusing a little bit more of our attention than we have in the past in generating from this body of work that the community-based adaptation community at large has produced, so that we can capture or at least feed into the fifth assessment of the IPCC, which is an extremely influential means of providing scientific information to global policymakers. The other thing that we're trying to do here, as has already been alluded up, is the issue of scaling up, as Atiq calls it, horizontally across many different places, replicating, multiplying in numbers by orders of magnitude, or scaling vertically up the decision-making ladder from local decision makers to national decision makers and indeed to global decision makers as well. And particularly with regard to the Cancun adaptation framework that Yusuf Nasif alluded to, the adaptation committee that's going to be set up at the framework convention level, the adaptation funds that will come from the fast-track funds and then later on from the larger funds that will be set up. These are now opportunities within the next few years for us to inform these global decision makers who are going to decide on fund flows as to how best to reach the most vulnerable people on the planet. And many of them want to do that. Most of them haven't a clue how they do that. They will find it easier to give large chunks of money to governments. That's their default setting. What we need to be able to do is to persuade them that there are other ways, more effective ways, to reach the most vulnerable people, to empower them and not just give them charity, and that our experience has something to contribute to that. So we want to use the experience that we have in doing these larger global advocacy activities at the global level as they take place going forward. We have a meeting immediately after this one in Bangkok, which a number of people will be attending, and then we have the next conference of parties coming up in Durban in South Africa in December this year. So these are avenues through which we will try and influence and incorporate our findings. In fact, we had invited both the former chair as well as the current chair of the Adaptation Fund Board, Farooq Khan and Anna Fornells respectively, to come here. Both of them had expressed a great deal of interest in coming. Farooq Khan had promised to try to come, but both of them have not been able to make it and have sent their regrets. But they remain interested in the work that we are doing, and they are sympathetic ears on a very influential body which is controlling and will determine fund flows on adaptation under the Adaptation Fund. So we have access to these very influential figures, and we have the means to try to provide them with the learning that we are going to be producing here. So we hope that the outputs that we will achieve here during the conference, by the end of the conference, we'll be able to share. One of the other aspects of this particular conference which I'd like to share with you, which we've not tried in the past, and this has been in response to the overwhelming desire for people to participate from all over the world. We haven't been able, we've expanded numbers enormously, but we just can't expand anymore in terms of the number of people we could invite and accommodate. So what we have tried to do this time is to get our colleagues from One Climate, One World, whom you will have seen if you visit the conferences or parties. They do live web streaming from the COPs. We've invited them to come and do that here today. And are we being live web streamed at the moment? We are indeed. We are being live web streamed, webcast, and people around the world can watch us. They will be doing the plenaries for each of the plenaries, and then they will, during the parallel sessions, they'll set up a booth at the back of the Winter Garden and doing a series of interviews. So if you're interested, please go and meet Jamie and Danny sitting up here, and they can arrange to have you interviewed. Let me also say a quick thing about logistics before the Prime Minister enters. She's on her way. After the Prime Minister gives a speech and we conclude the session, we'll have tea in the lobby here. And then the next plenary session is in the Winter Garden, not here, which is a 5-minute walk down the corridor to the other end, where the registered participants can pick up your badges and your bags and try and do that as quickly as possible, and then sit down and we'll start the next plenary session. We may ask you to cut your tea break a bit short, just to make sure that Charles, who I think is probably waiting for us at the Winter Garden, with fingers crossed that we arrive in time, so that he can start proceedings of the first plenary, and then we can start the activities that we have mainly come here to do. And I do apologize for the delay. As I said, we're affected by climate conditions in the Himalayas, even though we're in Bangladesh and the weather here is fine. That shows you how the world is connected. One of the other things that we are trying to do here, and indeed some of my colleagues have already started, and I want to issue an invitation to everybody else to do so as well, is to blog from here. Writing a blog is very easy, 500 to 700 words. It's a personal impression of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, the meeting, the discussions, your impressions of the country. The more personal, the better. It doesn't have to be an analytical piece. We have a special website for the conference on the IIED website, where we have colleagues in London who can help with the editing and putting it up. We can also put up video materials. So those of you who went on the field visits and have good video material, talk to my colleague Corinne. She'll show you how to do it. It's very easy to do. We can upload 3-4 minute clips of your field experiences, which I'm sure people will enjoy watching. There's a lot of people that are following the event. I've been doing since the 24th of March, when we started, a daily video log or vlog, just explaining what we're doing. And I've already received a lot of feedback that people are watching these and that they are following our events here. So the audience for what we are doing here is not just the people in Dhaka, in the Sheraton with us. There are many people outside who are actually following us day by day. And the more we can communicate with them, a sense of what we are doing, the better. And the more people get involved in doing that, the better. So feel free to blog, vlog, whatever you wish to do. Tweet if you're tweeting. Put them on Facebook if you have a Facebook account. Tell people, let people know what we're doing. And if you need any advice or help on how to do them, approach any of us, and we'd be happy to do that. One of the other things that I'll say about the organization, I would have done this in plenary, but since plenary is delayed, I'll do it now, is the way we're going to organize. I think the Prime Minister has arrived, so I'll just break here and receive her, and then we'll sit down and start the proceedings.